Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 49th edition of Prove All Things. Glad to have everyone out there joining us today, whether you are watching live on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, or on our CGI Digital Network app, on your phone, tablet, television, wherever. We thank you for joining us. Or if you're listening afterwards on one of the podcast streams, we're glad to have you today. I'm joined with co-host Mike James. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Jeff, good to see you again. Number 49. That's almost a year's worth of programs. I can't believe that we're at that point already.
Yeah, we actually started February 9th of last year, and it's February 8th for this year. So we're almost, I could say it's like a year anniversary, pretty much. Close enough, right?
Yeah. Where's the cake, man? We need some cake.
Definitely could use that. So how's it going in California?
Hey, going very well, Jeff. Again, we've got a new group out here in Pasadena, California. We've met for the third time last Sabbath. We're meeting for the fourth time this coming Sabbath. So it looks like we've got a small core group going here, and hopefully we will add to it as the weeks and months go by.
Wonderful. Yeah, things are going well here in Georgia. We actually had a Sabbath where everybody who was sick all came back. So we haven't lost anyone. So we all came back, and we had folks were still recovering somewhat, but it was just good to have everyone back after this recent bout with sickness.
Fantastic,
and,
fantastic.
Definitely keep praying for everyone, but definitely it was good to see everyone when you haven't seen them in a while.
Yeah, definitely. I hear the virus numbers are definitely reducing dramatically, so that's a good sign, and I'm hoping that we can get rid of this thing soon.
Yep. And we are, this is our, I think we could call this the 1 year anniversary show because next week will be after 1 year. Okay. So for a 1 year anniversary show, we have a special guest, a guest we've been holding on to for a while here. We are joined from Florida, from sunny Florida, I guess in the 50s, but sunny Florida, Jim O'Brien. How you doing, Jim?
Hey, we're doing great here. And it sounds like you guys have a Jubilee year coming up. You had 49, so you have 50 here.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we only missed a couple of episodes, and that was because of holy days or feast or being in the mountains, I guess. But
yeah. Well, so you get gold stars for all that work you're doing.
Yeah, so you're in Florida, and I guess you've joined us once or twice before, I believe. And so for the people who are new to the program, could you kind of introduce yourself? And for those who know you, could you give us an update on how you've been doing? Because we know we've been praying for you for months, and we just glad to see you're looking so healthy and happy there in Florida.
Thank you. We are. The prayers have been very effective. We had a little COVID, I guess is what it was. Never got tested, and some pneumonia. But we defied the odds, and it was pretty bad for a while. But we're thankful to be alive and kicking and coming around, starting to be able to get out and exercise a little bit. So those are all good things, and it changes your perspective on life just a little bit, and makes you very thankful for family and for the church family and for friends. So we're really grateful for all that. So personally doing a lot better coming back. Donna never had it quite as bad as I did. And I think it's because she lives a much better life than I do. But I'm sticking close with her. Anyway, the church is doing well. Like you guys have mentioned, there are people who were out for a while. Now they're back. It's good to see them healthy. And church seems to be growing. CFN is doing really well. A lot of things planned for the feast. There's some other things I'd like to be doing. We were going to do the Quality Church Retreat this spring, but it's just too much. We're kind of overwhelmed with a lot of work and catching up on things that we needed to catch up on. Common Faith Academy seems to be doing well. Great plans for that. Some terrific instructors, people picking up with it. So it's just good to be out to find out what the Church of God is like, how many friends you have out there, how many exciting things are happening around the country and around the world. So, and this Prove All Things is one of the good things that's happening. So we're thankful to be associated with it and to have good friends around with CGI, CEM, various independent congregations. It's just a good time to be alive.
Great. Great to hear that, Jim. And just for the folks out there, is the feast site for Common Faith Network going to be in Panama again, or where are you going to be this year?
We're looking at things right now. We're in Sandestin at the time, looking for the to see if we can firm things up, if the contract is right. So far, they've really been very accommodating to us, and housing looks excellent. The facilities look very good. In the end, it's always money, and they look like it's going to be a good contract for us. So it would appear right now that it will be Sandestin, but we've got to finalize that, and we hope to do that this afternoon, or at least to get a final contract from them this afternoon.
Okay, very good.
Okay,
very good.
Okay, wonderful. So I guess now everybody is now hearing this for the first time, that Sandestin is the spot this year. Most
looks like
likely.
what it will
Most
be.
likely. Okay, wonderful. So the Sandestin is definitely a pretty town. So the Common Faith Feast was there a couple years ago. Is that correct?
Yes, it was. This is the third time I believe we've met. We will be here if it works out this year. It's 2,400 acres. That's gated. It's a gated community. I love it because it's millennial. It's very safe. A lot of the homes come with golf carts. You can, it's potentially you could not start your car once you get your housing here, and walk or take your golf cart around, goes under Highway 98 up to the beach. We will have, looks like beachside housing, some condominiums right on the beach. And then there's housing that is on golf courses. There are 4 golf courses here, 22 restaurants, a Publix supermarket. They're just everything that is so good. The things look real good here in Sandestin. Hello to Skip Martin. Yeah, I'm talking about Sandestin, buddy. It's good to see you online here.
All right. Well, that sounds good. So that sounds very exciting, and it's February, but February is when it's cold. We start thinking about the feast. We start thinking about those plans, and there's a lot of people who, whenever that announcement is made, and I guess the contract's out there, definitely people will start signing up for it. I bet
we'll have that online as soon as possible.
Okay, wonderful. So today, Jim, I guess we've let you select a topic to talk about, and the one you have, I think, is very, very interesting, and probably very interesting for Prove All Things. And I'll let you go ahead and introduce it, and we can get started.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. It is a focal point of the Bible. When God started dealing with the Egyptians, you wonder, what was so important about having a bunch of pagans to recognize that he is God? It's important to him. And we learn even with the relationship that he had with Jonah, that he chastised Jonah, because Nineveh, this very pagan, very, pretty evil city, it was important that God save them. So he is the God of all mankind. And that's what he wants us to understand. And that's one of the things that came about with the plagues that happened in Egypt. When you think about this, from the beginning, from the time that Joseph went into Egypt, this was planned. It wasn't something that just happened by accident or coincidentally. God had to plan this, and he sent Joseph there and to open the way, and then 70, or depending on how you count it, 75 people wound up in Egypt, and a nation develops from this. And from the beginning of time, God was working with mankind, with people, and then things went wrong. The murder of Abel by his brother Cain, and then people become evil, and God destroys the world with a flood, and then he starts over again, and eventually we come down to Abraham and his descendants, and then down to Jacob, to Israel in heading toward the promised land, but there they come out of Egypt. So there is a particular thought process in the mind of God as he develops this, and he allows them. But it's through Joseph that this becomes a communistic country, that it was people had their own property, and there's this famine that comes on the land, and it is through Joseph that Egypt is saved, and they become this totalitarian regime, and the people of God then become slaves in that particular country. There's a plan to all this. One, God loves freedom, and they had to go through the trials before they ever became convicted of the need for freedom. And then he performs these miracles to show that he is God. All of these Hebrew children have been thrown in the Nile. Now, it's almost inconceivable that they would be this cruel to take these babies and throw them into the Nile. Here are Hebrew mothers who watch their children either drown or be eaten by crocodile, alligators. I mean, this is cruelty beyond what human imagination. How could a people be that cruel? So the first thing that God gives them is to drink blood. We were talking about this yesterday with the Swensons, our friends that are down here, and there was a thing in a Reader's Digest a few years ago, a family that was on a yacht, and they were crossing the Atlantic, and three great white sharks or whales attacked their yacht and destroyed it, and they wound up in the lifeboat for a few weeks. How do you live? You don't have water to drink. And they would catch turtles and drain the blood from them. Kind of gross, isn't it? They would drink the blood to stay alive. Well, that's what happened to the Egyptians.
Wow.
They had to drink blood to stay alive, but they had shed the blood of God's people, and so they were forced to look at it from that. So God's getting their attention. That would get your attention. You would turn to God at a time like that. And then you have these other plagues that come along. The frogs. There's a little humor in this, in spite of the tragic nature of it and the grossness of it. You imagine frogs coming into your house. They're jumping on the kitchen counter. They're in the food. They're in bed with you. There's got to be some angels that are chuckling up there. Let's see these frogs jump in Pharaoh's bed. They're all over the place. And so they have to go to God. And there's another humor to it. Pharaoh calls his magicians, and he says, can you guys do this? And they say, yeah. Well, they don't get more frogs. They make more frogs. They don't get rid of the frogs. They make more frogs. They don't get rid of the lice. They make more lice. And Pharaoh gets pretty frustrated about this. So he gets a little angry at his own magicians. In chapter 8 of Exodus, in verse 8, Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron, and finally he says, this is a progressive circumstance. First of all, Pharaoh doesn't know God. I don't know who this God is, and why should I listen to him? That's your God. I got many other gods up here. They're more powerful than your God. I mean, after all, your God has made you slaves. So he says, entreat the Lord. Now he's calling on God. So his mind is progressing, that he may take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go, that they may sacrifice to the Lord. So notice, all this is about worship of God. If we ever wonder whether it's important to keep the Feast of Tabernacles, and there's another factor here. This occurs before Passover. How long before Passover? A month? 6 months? Could this have been the Feast of Tabernacles that they're originally called to go out and keep, to leave Egypt and go 3 days journey into the desert. We don't know it could have been a Passover a year prior to this, but there's a time lapse in here. So Pharaoh is addressing his request to God rather than his gods. So he's beginning to recognize the God of the Hebrews, and that this God is superior to all these other gods. So, and he calls him by name, Yahweh the Lord. So Moses said to Pharaoh, "Accept the honor of saying, when I shall intercede for you, for your service." Sort of like, the magician may say, "You pick a card. You pick the card, and I'll tell you what it is." Except this is not a magician. This is a real thing. The magicians are an imitation of God. This is to demonstrate the power of God. So Moses allows Pharaoh to choose the time. Now, this is a fascinating interchange from the mind of God. I think if we approach it from that perspective, it's like when Jeremiah, he refers to the objects of nature as dumb idols. And of course, we're familiar with the chapter 10 where he talks about the Christmas tree. It doesn't have feet. It can't go someplace. It can't walk. It can't answer your prayers. So the difference is God is real. These gods are fakes. And so that's where we are with Exodus. What is this God who is more powerful than all of the others? And he's the only true God. So he says, tomorrow, Pharaoh does, "Let it be according to your word, that you may know," and this is the key, "that you may know that there is no one like the Lord our God." And this is the key factor. It is making God known to mankind, and that is the greatest contribution to mankind that's ever been made, that this God is the God. So what is the benefit?
That's interesting, Jim. Just a question before you go on. When you look at those plagues, I've heard that the plagues were God controlling, in a sense, what the Egyptians thought were gods. For example, the Nile River, the various animals that the Egyptians had as gods within their pantheon of gods, and even the darkness at the end. Darkness is controlling the light. So the light, the sunlight, is a god also to the ancients. Do you think God was trying to manipulate those various things because Egypt and Israel would know that whoever this Yahweh is, he's mightier than all of these Egyptian gods, because the Israelites would have known, living there all those years, who the Egyptian gods were. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. I think you're right on track here. They had existed in the sense of saying, here's the sun. The sun controls crops. The Nile River controls the ground. What comes up washes up that we can grow food from. So they viewed nature, and even from the beginning of the year, December 25th, that is the celebration of the Saturnalia, all of these things were a looking to nature. And God is saying, I am above nature. And there's several important factors there. He tells man to have dominion over nature. You are to control nature. Nature is not to control you. In other words, it may get cold, but you can put a coat on, It may rain, build a roof, put that over your house, stay out of the rain. So you control nature. You put a bridle on a horse, you put a leash on a dog. You don't do that to human beings. So
okay. So what you're saying, I guess, is that the God that's revealed here is a God that is apart from nature.
He's
that
above
all the pagans, they worship nature. Their God is part of nature, and this is saying their God is not a part of this. He's beyond this.
And that man is now liberated from nature. He is not controlled by nature. God is above nature, and God has made man to have control of nature. So it's a part of that freedom. And secondly, God made morality universal in this process of dealing with Pharaoh. There may be cultural differences, but morality is universal. Murder is wrong, whatever culture you are a part of. Theft is wrong. Infidelity is wrong. It's for all human beings. So this God is the creator God. He is the one who is, his morality is universal. So you may have another God who thinks differently, and that's the way Pharaoh was. One God, if he says something I don't like, I go to the other God, and I'll talk to him. Well, no, this is one God, and you got to deal with him. He is ultimate justice. Third,
I guess we see that justice playing out in that last plague, where the firstborn are then destroyed of the Egyptians. And again, God's justice. What did the Egyptians do to the Hebrews? They killed them. They threw them in a river, like you were saying. And then that last plague kind of brings everything back around in a sense, right?
That's an excellent point. If God is not just, look, what if the Muslim God was God, and that your purpose in life was to produce children, daughters, to become sex slaves of some evil man? What would you think about that God? That you'd rather not have eternal life than to continue producing children for some wicked purpose like that. This God is just. This God is moral, and his morality is universal. So yeah, you're right on there.
I just want to mention something. I guess morality and just, and this is probably for those who are watching who may be skeptical or like we're reading the Bible, and they'll say, "Well, how can a God be just who kills all the firstborn of the Egyptians?" How would you answer that? How is God just? But here he is; he's killing all these innocent firstborns, and also, I guess, and older, somewhat there in the land.
You know, that is a major question that comes up, an accusation that's sort of levied against God. How can he be just? For example, let's go back to the flood, because that's one of the places that question comes up so powerfully. How can you destroy every human being except for these 8 people? Is that a just God? Young children, infants, innocent people. So, and the answer is that God is so concerned with having a just society that ultimately, whatever it takes to allow this society to exist is, in other words, the kingdom of God. When Jesus returns to this earth and creates the millennial reign and then on into the kingdom of God forever, that is the ultimate importance: righteousness, goodness, coming to God. So if God had not done that during the days of Noah, what would have happened? Well, eventually evil people they were already taking over the world, and no man would have had an opportunity to worship God, to come to a just society. So the purpose for which God made the world could never be achieved. So Egypt was the most powerful nation on the face of the earth. And if they continued to gain this power, nobody would be able to know God. Nobody would know justice. Justice would be whatever the prevailing Pharaoh said justice was. So unless he did this, now notice when we get all the way down to the time of David and where the Ark of the Covenant was stolen, that here are these pagans a few hundred years after this event with Pharaoh and the Egyptians. They're looking back and say, wait a minute, you don't want to mess with this God. Take this Ark of the Covenant and send it to another city, to another city, to another city. And they go through 5 cities and they say, well, look, return it to the Hebrews. We can't live with this God. That's why I'm saying that the most important idea in world history is knowing who is God. And when they prevent that, whatever it takes to make these people, to bring them to justice is worth it. We said that, it's like a mother sending her child out at the Revolutionary War or the Civil War. She knows that she may lose her child or her husband, but it's worth it to have freedom. So these values are worth whatever it takes.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on something there. The idea of freedom, free will, in essence, where God is allowing man and woman to make their own choices because of what He wants us to become later. He can't have us be robots. He can't have us just do what He says. Where's the free will? Where's the agency within you to become more like Him if you don't have a choice? But I think what a bigger point is, and we get into this in the class that I'm running in a week here. Why does God allow evil, pain, and suffering? Through God's strategic plan. You guys tell me what you think about this. Through God's strategic plan, when we get to the last great day, when we get to that big general resurrection, everybody's going to become aware, and just by coming back and living again, you will be aware of who that God was that brought you back to life. And that will be a significant event that I think will lead many people to believe that God and begin to follow that God, because they'll be aware of all this long history of God allowing man to show Himself that He can't do it. He can't do it without God. So all of the heartache and suffering and the pain that people have endured throughout history will come to the forefront at that last general resurrection. An awareness will be there of who God really is. And I believe that will impact the majority of people to begin to follow Him. What do you guys think?
Well, I think you're exactly right. You mentioned something there. You mentioned several profound things there, Mike. One of them is that we're not robots. And that's one of the things that we're talking about right now with the, can there be a human, can they implant something in our brains? Can we be sort of computerized human beings? Would we be more moral? Would we be more just if there was some kind of a human that was sort of an android, a Dr. Spock type person? Because that's literally what people are thinking now.
They're talking about creating those people, Jim, right now.
Right now.
Yeah. It's out there. Yeah.
And what we're saying is that this is the ultimate morality, that a spirit in man. When I was in college at Murray State University, I was majoring in psychology, and we had at the end of the term, at the end of the 4 years, we had like a symposium, a series maybe of seminars, and the head of the psych department. We were all getting together with our brilliant ideas and what we had learned from 4 years of college, and he says, I really have come to the conclusion that the difference between a man and a monkey is the opposable thumb. I said, well, I paid a lot of money to go to this school, and this is the brightest professor in my chosen field, and the only thing he sees is a difference between a human being and a monkey is the opposable thumb. And it's a psychologist that's saying this, deals with the psyche. He ought to recognize the spirit in man, that there is a non-physical component in a human being. And so that's really what he's getting to here. That, look, when you think back, that good and evil are real. The American Revolution was fought for an ideal. It wasn't fought just to get land. It was fought for freedom, so we could achieve something that was non-physical.
Jim, you speak of the American Revolution, and so that makes me think of a question to ask you based on what you said earlier. You mentioned the flood. The flood was an event where, and I've really never thought about it like this, is where God had to remove the old world so that freedom could be still be there for people to be able to choose God, because the old world was not going to allow that. And I guess there's another event at the Tower of Babel where God has to say, y'all can't just get there and build this tower. Y'all got to spread apart, or things are going to go too fast, and it's not going to be, I guess freedom's not there. And it looks like, Drew, God allows kingdoms. We see that in Daniel. He allows kingdoms to exist. And these kingdoms are there, even though they're not perfect, so that maybe freedom can be there for people to choose God and people to serve God. And it looks like with the United States right now, and if we look at what we see in our world, the United States has done that recently. Even though we're not perfect, we've been able to provide freedom to the world so that people can have an opportunity to learn about
That's the
Christ.
great contribution of this country has been freedom.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
I mean, people are still trying to come across the border to escape something so they can get here to find some freedom. This is not something just some individuals, some people. Mona Sharon and a number of other historians were touring Mount Vernon a few years ago, and David McCullough was leading the group. And he was telling them, there beside George Washington's bedstead was the Bible, the Holy Bible, and I think what was it? Another one of the historical books. Anyway, so somebody asked David McCullough after this tour, how was it that these people came together in one place at this time to be able to create the United States of America? And David McCullough's answer was profound. He said it was providential. It had to be God. Now, I don't want to say McCullough said it had to be God. That's my editorial comment on what he said. But when you say it was providential, that's what this academician is saying. This country was founded by God, just like ancient Israel was, for a purpose. And freedom is that important, that what God would do to take Israel, one, to put them in slavery. I mean, you don't even know how valuable freedom is until you have slavery, and then you come out of slavery. And
Right.
He is known for...
Yeah, Jim, I think the experience of life, again, looking at all of our history, when people are resurrected and they look back on all that experience, they'll have to, they're going to have to say, I believe in this God. I'm going to follow this God. Of course, Satan will be loosed for a time, but I think that part of God's strategy is in creating humanity and allowing us to have a brain. God knew that certain people would get it. A vast majority would not get it because of all these various possibilities that are out there to confuse us. But in that strategic plan that he had created, he was going to give the greatest opportunity to everyone at some point. And just the way the plan falls out, I think it's going to have to come at the end because of all this stuff that can lead you away from God happening now and today.
Yes, and you made the point earlier about the resurrection, and this one of the few things is, what is it? One of the people has referred to it as the fair chance doctrine, and that this life is not all there is, but it is a preparation. And without this life, to come up in that kind of a resurrection would be less meaningful. That is, I've experienced this for X number of years. I lived under the way the world was. I have all of those memories. And now I see Jesus Christ here on the earth. It's got to be in the mind of God to go back. I mean, we asked the question, how could Satan ever have turned the way he did? He was there in the third heaven. So knowing that is possible, seeing God, being there with the angels, experiencing this power, you were made by him, and you still turned against him. How can you prevent that from happening again? You give them life in a world that's controlled by Satan, and then you bring them up in a second resurrection for a life that is controlled by Jesus Christ, or a world that's controlled by Jesus Christ. And that provides freedom for them, but it also, then they're left without excuse.
Yeah. That freedom makes you realize that, hey, there's another way. When Adam and Eve sinned, okay, they were tempted. They went after this thing just like we all do. We all go after that shiny object. and then you learn lessons. You learn lessons from those decisions that I think are going to serve you well in the future. But people will argue, well, why didn't the Israelites understand when God took them out of Egypt that why didn't they continue to be obedient to him and follow him? Jim, I think part of the reason is they thought there really were these other gods out there, and their God was just showing off at this time. And they thought that he wasn't that big of a deal because everybody thought there were these other gods that were out there. I think that has something to do with why the Israelites messed up once they got out there. They just thought, hey, there's other gods. They just weren't performing as well at this point.
You're right. And what was necessary for those people to realize God is the ultimate judge of all mankind, the Egyptians as well as the Israelites. They got to understand he's the ultimate judge. He is ultimately. You can't have 5 different gods, each saying different things. There must be a universal morality, and for that to occur, there must be one God. And he must be the ultimate justice can only occur if there's a just God. And that gives hope for mankind. As I mentioned earlier, look at these other gods, and if they were God, when we were resurrected into that world or we lived in that world, we'd get frustrated with that life and say, life is not worth living.
I think you talking about justice there, Jim. What does God do once Israel gets out into that wilderness? He gives them the law. Okay. Yeah. He's trying to show them that this is what I'm all about, and you need to be obedient to this. And of course, the world has not done that, and we see what that has wrought within the history of mankind. So you're right. You're right on target. That freedom, but you can't really be free unless you have that character and that morality that God is all about.
That's a fascinating point, that human beings, we are not saved. I've never taught, and the people that I've worked with in the Church of God historically have not taught that we are saved by keeping the law. What the law does is express the character of God, and that has to be demonstrated. We have to be taught that. We have to learn about that, and as ultimately, then that law is written on the heart. We express by the things we do. When I was a pilot, I learned 10 hours of flying with this coach, the schoolmaster, sitting in the right seat right next to me. And when I'd make a mistake, he would correct it. And he would say, for example, get the wings level the wings. And I'm looking on altitude, and I'm looking on all these other things. And so I make a slight adjustment, but it's not enough. It wasn't what he wanted. And he would pop that yoke on his side of the plane, and just plane would go, and I feel like I'm slide out. And he said, I said, level the wings. Oh, yeah, okay. I didn't know what you meant. All right. The time came where he said, all right, I want you to pull off the apron here. We'll make it land, pull off to the apron. I'm going to get out of the plane. This is the first time now I am leaving. I'm flying this plane, leaving the ground, staying in the landing pattern, but I'm by myself in that airplane. Never one time for a slight millisecond did I ever think that the laws of aerodynamics are eliminated. Now I have to obey them from my heart. It has to be habitual, or if I don't, I'm going to die. So the idea of law keeping was not something that it's, this is to save my life. That's what it's all about. So ultimate justice can only occur if there is a just God, and that just God gives us hope, because they're the 3 greatest things: faith, hope, and mercy. Justice, mercy, and faith. So justice can only be achieved if there is mercy, that hope in God's mercy that we have. And then
Great point. Great point on the mercy there, because when you think about the firstborn of Egypt, they will be resurrected. They're just sleeping
Yes.
right now. So
Right.
God is love. There is mercy
Mm-hmm.
there, and that's what the atheists, the agnostics, are not aware of in this debate that you have with them
Mm-hmm.
sometimes on God is evil, God is
Mm-hmm.
wicked. He destroys. I don't want anything to do with that God. No, only through the evil that we experience will he be able to save some in the future, I believe, and have mercy on them,
Yeah. Yeah. Thinking of what you were saying about the plagues, Jim, and that that Israel comes out to freedom from, but the plagues happen and God's power is shown, and the world, the most powerful nation, sees God. Do you think there's like a parallel with the end times?
Yes, there
Because
is.
because there's a because at the very end times, right? Doesn't God judge the nations, and you have all these different plagues that really make the ones in Egypt just pale in comparison. But it's there bringing that freedom of Christ in His second coming.
These plagues directed against the animals elevated man. These people it's hard for us to think that they viewed themselves as subject to the animals. Almost like somebody who was these people, these Tarzan type people we find occasionally, who grew up out in the wilderness or something, and they learned to work with the animals. They lived among them, but the animals had power over them to some degree. But this elevated man above the animals. And what we're going through in the school systems now, you can't say what sex you are, but now you can't even say that you are a human. If you identify, and Deanne Howe was telling me about this recently, about kids in elementary school that identify as a cat or a dog. And so here's a substitute teacher that comes in and says, calls roll, and the little child answers meow. And the sub teacher thinks this is a joke, but it's real. And so the other students have to tell the sub teacher that no, this person, we have to respect that we have to respect that this person identifies as an animal, as a cat. This is unreal that schools actually are doing things like this. And Deanne said they refer to these people as furries. So the other kids talk about this person is not a human being, it's a furry. Well,
wow.
We've lost the concept. In other words, this is it's so important that God revealed to those people that we are not animals, we are above animals. It is where human self-worth comes from. And this is valuable to consider, that self-worth is actually developed through this process. It was Calvin Coolidge who spoke in 1916, 150th anniversary of the founding of the U.S., the Declaration of Independence, that is. And he said, the reason we vote, this is 1916, Calvin Coolidge said this, the reason we vote in the United States is because we are made in the image of God. Now, that's incredible that a president would be saying that to the nation. We are made in the image of God, and that's the basis for the founding of our country and for how we vote. In other words, no one has the right to rule over someone who is made in the image of God without his consent. Now, the three of us are married, and if we had just gone and grabbed our wife, put a lasso around her neck and said, I like the way you look, you're coming home with me, you're going to bear my children, it probably would not have been an effective means of courtship. She had to agree to it. Now, she also agreed that when I get transferred, she's going to come with me, or she's going to bear children, she'll be staying at home, things like that. But the point is, if I'm going to be subject to this man, I got to have some say in here, and it's got to be by choice, not by coercion. So
great point. Yeah. Hey, Jeff. When you were talking about the Revelation, I just opened up to Revelation 16, And I
Okay.
see those similarities
Right.
in the plagues in Egypt. You know, the blood, the darkness, the boils. You find them laid out there in Revelation also.
Well, there's also the similarity, in that you had Moses and Aaron as God's witnesses, and then there's these two witnesses at this time. Whenever this time of the end is, because I guess the world is so far away from God, so far from understanding God, that these two witnesses actually have to go and tell people this is what's going on. This is the God that's doing this, and this is the reason why. In the way that Moses and Aaron were talking to the Pharaoh.
Yeah. What's interesting also is when you look at the end time and you think of they will be slaves, but maybe not aware of it, just like
Yeah.
ancient Israel. You know, once you're a slave for a long period of time, you kind of lose sight of that. It's just the normal thing that you just keep doing a generation after generation. So there might be some ties between those two experiences. What do you think, Jim?
I think you're right on, Mike. I think the parallel between the end time and what happened with Exodus is so striking. A student of the Bible has to recognize the parallel nature that exists, and that human beings have to make the choice to choose God. Somehow we got to be in the process. And that's another factor that occurs when God deals with Moses. He says, you go say this. Why didn't God just do it? No, Moses, I want you to get involved in this. And Moses goes and cries out. It's parallel to marriage. It is in a sense that there is an emotion that's involved in the relationship with these two people. They want each other, and they both make this choice voluntarily. So these things are brought out, manifested in this everything that happened there in with Moses and the Israelites and the Egyptians. Now, I got a lot more, but I don't want to go overtime with you. You tell me how much further you want to go here, and I'm with you.
You got about 12 minutes, Jim. So what do you want to develop further for that? Yeah, keep going. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. All right. Next thing is God introduced human equality here. Mm-hmm. Being made in the image of God makes us all equal before God. Now, look what comes from that. Magna Carta said that the king has to obey the laws just like a citizen does, or the Declaration of Independence. We looked at the divine right of kings to rule, and we said, no, that's not going to work for us. He may be a king, and we may need to obey him, but he has to obey the laws too. We're all equal. And then men will go to war for these concepts such as freedom. I mean, look what's happening with the truckers up in Canada, and it looks like it may happen with the truckers in the U.S. now. People gave them $10 million because they believe in something you can't see, freedom. These are values. I wonder sometimes why a woman will go through the process of giving birth to a child. I mean, it's painful. It's not easy, and you're going to spend the rest of your life taking care of this child. Until they grow to adulthood, and then you still have to be involved with them. I mean, it's a good thing. We do it for the unseen value of love. And so this introduced that there is a spiritual component to life. What you can't see, Pharaoh, and what you can't see, you Egyptians, and even the Israelites, is God who is spirit, and that is more powerful than the physical. So the human equality, the view of something that is non-physical, those who worship God must worship him in spirit and in truth. So we have love, hope, and faith. And you come to realize that those are greater things than the physical things. You know, I'll take a child over this house. This house is in a bad neighborhood. I like the house, but it's a bad neighborhood for raising children. I'm out of here. I love this kid more than I love this place that I'm living in. Then there is so the spirit realm teaches us that the physical is not the only reality. Reality is something that we can't see. What did Blake say? Jesus told him, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. Yeah, unseen. Blake's a smart guy, isn't he?
Yeah,
So-
that equality you're talking about, Jim. I just taught a class on your Common Faith Academy about world religions, and the point of the class was to try to show how Christianity is different from these other major world religions. And one aspect we brought out within Hinduism was that the caste system kind of was created because of this concept of karma, where they believe they're reincarnated, and what you do in this life has an effect on your next existence. So you've got this class called the Untouchables that gets discriminated against within Indian society. Now, the government of India is trying to eradicate that, but it's tough getting rid of it. But that comes from these ideas within Hinduism, basically karma, where Christianity says what? There's neither Jew nor Greek, male nor female. We're all equal within Christ Jesus. And again, that concept is hindering people who believe in Hinduism within the country of India. There's a lot of problems because of that. But here in the United States, where we try to give everybody equality, we aren't perfect at it, but we have it in our law that you have a greater society with that freedom where people are not in classes. If you're in a lower class, you can bring yourself up to the top by your work and by how hard you're going to go at it. Where in India, certain people are, because of that discrimination due to the religion, they are stuck in that community and disadvantaged because of it.
Well, yeah. What religion got rid of slavery? What religion got rid of slavery? Christianity. No other religion even touched it.
Yeah, some of those abolitionists were looking at the Bible and saying, "Hey, wait a minute, we're all equal." Now, some use the Bible for negative purposes to say, "Oh, there were slaves back then, so you slaves should listen to me." But again, they weren't reading the Bible correctly, right, Jim?
Right.
You're exactly right. This is if India had worshipped the God of the Bible, then India would have freedom. And so what does that say about the millennium? It's going to be 3 years before Egypt, right next door, actually comes up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. So it's, again, evidence of God's commitment to freedom. And as this message goes out, people will start accepting it. They'll believe it. They'll look next door and say, look how good things are going over there. Eventually, they're going to come to say it's this God that they worship. So the concept of God gives purpose to life. Without a creator, life is just random and meaningless. When you're raising your children, they're little barbarians, and you tell them to do something, they say, why? Well, I want you to understand that there is a purpose to life, but right now the purpose is you're going to have to avoid punishment. That's why you're going to do it. And as you do these things, as you act on it, then you're going to come to understand that there's a purpose to these laws. Then, as you pointed out, God gives human beings free will. If we are only physical, if there is not a spiritual component to it, then everything is determined by our genes and our environment. Only if there's a spirit in man can we rise above our environment, above our physical conditions. So if we look at a criminal and we say, you are just physical, you're a product of your genes, you robbed this person or you attacked this person because of your DNA, then you can't put him in prison. You can't hold him responsible, only if he has a spirit that says, and this is one of the greatest, the most powerful things within a human being. I can repent. I can change. Repentance is the most powerful gift that God has given to us. I don't have to be the way I am. And then next is God teaches us through this that might is not right. God is right regardless of politics, regardless of military power. It was Machiavelli who claimed that might is right. Well, if that was true, then if China has a more powerful army than the U.S., then China can take over the U.S., and they're right. Or Hitler, in killing all of the Jews, was right, if might is right. If God is right, Hitler is wrong. And then, of course, we go back to the concept that God is the ultimate judge. And that means that in the resurrection, we will have the right judge over mankind. And the last point I want to get across, the concept of God makes moral progress possible. Societies can look back and say, well, we made a mistake, before. This group had a wrong concept. Let us make a change. Let us rise above that. And each generation gets better from now on. So with God here on earth for 1,000 years, every generation is going to improve. Now, you know that there's an exception to that. There's still going to be those who will choose to go wrong. And at the end of that period of time, depending on how you understand prophecy, there's going to be a war with Gog and Magog to go out to make war against Jesus Christ again. But there is a section of the world who believes in God. They will continue to progressively improve their moral stature. And it will be a better society, a richer society, a more loving society, safer. Everything will be better.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jim. I've done a lot of research recently on how important Christianity is to Americans today or to other people in the world. And the numbers are just going down dramatically in the last 10 years as opposed to the 20 years before that. And what you see is culturally, society is also going down as far as how many children are being born out of wedlock today? How many, abortions? How often is abortion being promoted in the world? What about homosexual marriage? And like you're saying, you can be this gender one day and this gender another day. If there is no truth that people hold up, society is going to go into a downward spiral, just like the millennium will build up society over time. I see us slowly descending downward today. I think the signs are there.
Yes.
I taught school in an inner city school. Cut me off if you don't have time. 50 years ago. I can't believe it's been a half century. But what happened was the school was so bad, and teachers, they had a meeting and they said, well, a classroom cannot exist with John Jones in that classroom. I don't care what class he goes in, it's going to turn out bad. Okay. They said all the teachers should write down. Now, this was the worst school in this large city. And so all the teachers wrote 3 names of their worst students. The 60 names that appeared on that list the most often, they just took them out of the main school, put 3 portable classrooms in the backyard, and they hired 5 of us to teach them. Out of those 60 students, 59 of them came from single parent homes. One of those came from such a structured family that this kid was way above all of the other kids in school. And, he was just bored in the classroom. But for 59 of them, they were pimps. This junior high school, pimps, prostitutes, thieves, the worst. And it was because of the lack of family. The structure that God created in the beginning is a benefit to mankind.
Right on. Yeah. And we see what's going to happen if we don't have those strong families anymore. And the writing is on the wall. I see the writing on the wall out there. Yeah.
Yeah. We can pray that things, slow down. But you're right, Mike. It does look like our society is, instead of the improving phase, we're now in the declining phase. in so
Oh
many
yeah,
aspects.
hey, listen, I'm always hopeful, and I'll always keep
yeah,
focused on the positive and trying to
right.
lead people out of it. But again, when you get numbers that start to fall dramatically like that, and you start to get to the 50% range of, you know, 50% of kids are now born out of wedlock, you know, what's going to happen to them as they get older? Are they?
There is an attack on this. You're right. What is it? Marxism has a stated goal of destroying the family, destroying the right of private ownership of property. All of those things are Christian values. That's what we're trying to promote, Christian values.
Okay. It looks like we lost Mike there at the last second, but that's okay. We're at the end of our hour here. So hopefully maybe Mike will join us here in a second. If not, we will definitely see Mike next week. And Jim, I want to thank you for joining us today and for this very interesting discussion. I know we could probably go on for a few more hours just talking about these things because these are important concepts really for us today that you expressed there. And there's Mike again. I want to see if I can get him back on here. Hey, Mike.
Okay, maybe I got too loud there.
No, you were lost, but now you're found.
Yes, we found you. We found you just in time to say goodbye.
Jim, thanks so much. Great conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, it was. Thank you, guys.
All right, we'll say goodbye. We'll see everybody next time, and hopefully it won't be so long before we see you again here, Jim.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.